Welcome to Matters of the Mind. I'm Dr. Rick Adams, licensed psychotherapist and professor of psychology and human behavior. This podcast is devoted to helping you understand how the mind is shaped and influenced physically, psychologically, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. For more than 3 decades, I've been blessed with a front row seat into the minds of humanity. And now it's my desire to use that experience to help, aid, and assist you through this Matters of the Mind podcast. Today's Matter of the Mind topic, though, is one that cuts across every area of life. So much so that throughout this series, I'll be conversating with other clinicians, counselors, psychotherapists, as well as psychiatrists, along with some of my current as well as former registered interns who actively work in the field of behavioral health. Because this topic is one that I choose not to tackle alone. Today's Matter of the Mind topic is mental health. But instead of approaching it in a traditional way, I've decided to focus by asking my guests 3 critical questions. Where are we, where we're going, and where we're headed? Because I truly believe that where we are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually today directly influences where we're going and ultimately where we're headed. Where we're headed as individuals, where we're headed as families, as well as where we're headed as a society. And to help me unpack this episode today is a very special guest, someone that I've worked with and I've known for many, many years. And that person is Tammy Austin. Tammy, welcome to Matters of the Mind. Let me tell you a little bit about Tammy. Tammy is also, like myself, a licensed mental health counselor, as well as a relationship therapist. She's also a mindset coach and the author, as well as an author, which we'll be talking about your books. And she's dedicated to helping individuals and couples navigate through life's challenges with authenticity and resilience. She's the owner of Journeys in Counseling, as well as the host of her own podcast, which is Therapy Unchained. Throughout her work, she's empowered people and strengthened their relationships, as well as allowed them to improve emotional wellness and create lives that's rooted in self-awareness, growth, as well as purpose. Tammy, once again, welcome to Matters of the Mind.
Okay. Thank you very much. Pleasure
Tammy,
to be here.
I said it earlier, between you and I, we have multiple years of experience.
Yes.
I've worked with you in the early 90s, and we worked together at the shelter, working with youth. And I really wanted to just kind of talk about this topic, specifically with individuals like yourself, because you and I have been in this field of mental health for a very long time. And I wanted to kind of help people understand where we are, where we're going, and where we're headed. But I wanted to do it from a perspective of working with the younger therapists and asking them what they're seeing. But also I like it where I've worked with someone who's seasoned and with wisdom like yourself in the field of mental health. And we can kind of look at where we were when we started out and also where we are now. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So from your perspective, whether it comes to whether it's in regards to mental health, families, relationships, from your perspective, where are we?
Well, we are in a very high stress environment.
Okay.
Frequently what I'm saying to my patients, the fact that we are living in a 24-hour news cycle constantly, our nervous systems are certainly on fight, flight, freeze, all of that. And then you're just trying to deal with everyday life. And it's overwhelming. And I think, my message to people, if you feel overwhelmed, you are overwhelmed in the sense that we are clearly in unprecedented times. And, that certainly further exacerbates just the daily stressors of life. So I think that's where we are. We're trying to figure all of this out. I think all of us are.
Which brings me to something you said, and that kind of sticks with me, everyday life, okay? So when it comes to everyday life, as far as everyday life challenges, what are you seeing mostly, not just in your practice, but as a whole? That's some of those everyday life experiences.
Well, I think people are exhausted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they're exhausted.
Meaning?
Meaning that just, again, trying to get through the day, trying to juggle all the balls, just trying to manage everything. We jokingly say life is lifing, and life is lifing times 2 or times 3, I think, at this point. And I think it's a challenge for providers as well as, again, for our patients. The tools have to be different, really meeting people where they are. And I will also add the caveat that I think it's even more critical that providers tune in and take care of themselves as well. Because again, none of us can pour from an empty cup. So making sure that we're protecting our peace so that we can do the work that, certainly gives us a sense of purpose and passion without burning out.
And that's one of the things that I've been very blessed and fortunate to do. And I've been known as the counselor's counselor because a lot of the individuals that I have in my private practice are other clinicians that are really having their own challenges in this thing called life.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you're not being poured into in some way, then how can you really truly pour into others and use the gifts that God has given you? And from that perspective, then what are you seeing that even therapists and individuals in the helping profession, what are you seeing that are some of their challenges? Where are they at?
Well, again, I think they are struggling with their own burnout. It's also, and as we know, there's several stages to burnout. The actual, when you start to feel it, you're probably further in than you realize. And so just the bargaining with oneself to be able to show up and be the best version of themselves, that's a challenge. In terms of, I'm going to say managing the weight of what our clients and patients are bringing to the therapy session. People are coming in with much more heavier issues than they probably have in the past. One thing that I appreciate, I know for many of the patients or clients that I work with, therapy is really part of a lifestyle management. It's not necessarily coming in because the ship is sinking or the plane's on fire. It's sort of like we want to keep the plane flying now. And so like, we got through the crisis and they see this as part of their overall wellness and just emotional well-being. And so I really appreciate that and like and enjoy being a part of that lifestyle management now. But again, when people initially do come in, they are coming in with much more heavy issues. I personally am working with a lot of trauma and childhood trauma, and people even in their 50s, 60s, continuing to try to unpack and understand some of the trauma and how it's impacted their lives over the years. People transitioning into that next chapter of life. As you indicated, I actually have two practices. I have a coaching practice as well as a therapy practice. And so with the coaching, we are really working on the mindset necessary to make peace with where they are in life and to be able to accept sometimes those things that were challenges previously, but really to look at how can I make this season the best season, so to speak. And then on the therapy side, of course, we're really kind of digging in and exploring the trauma, walking through those uncomfortable places, and sitting with the discomfort, so that
And that can be difficult. Yeah.
yes.
We may be here a while because there's so many nuggets that you've just talked about. Okay, and one of them that I want to kind of focus on is the area of vicarious trauma. Okay, because when we talk about those in the helping profession, we do hear a lot about trauma. Okay, and sometimes, and I think not everyone understands what vicarious trauma is and being able to experience it through others. However, can you talk about that as far as from your perspective, how vicarious trauma works, as well as some of the things that as clinicians or those in the helping profession, what they can look out for?
Well, I'm going to say oftentimes just because that hour is over doesn't mean it's over.
There you go.
And
There
so
you go.
and so
That's good.
yeah. And I know oftentimes, and I share this now, and I honestly I love the people that I work with because I'm going to say we could keep it real and
Yes.
have real
Yep.
conversation.
And that's one of my slogans. Let's keep it real. Yep.
And so, I love that. And so I will tell them sometimes too that, or I'll tell them maybe the following week or 2 2 weeks later, hey, when you said such and such, or you were telling me about this, I just want you to know that, hey, I was thinking about that. Because I think, our clients think that, okay, I said it and it's there and it's done. And it's great because they can feel that sense of relief. But oftentimes, the therapist is still holding that.
Correct.
And one of the things I know I actively work toward is not holding because we can. Yeah, we can hold it for weeks, we can hold it for months, and so being aware of that. And again, as I talk about and post all the time about protecting one's peace, we have to do the same thing.
Correct.
And we have to be aware that at the end of the day, I'm going to equate it to like the Roomba. For those that have Roombas, you have to empty the little canister
Correct,
out.
correct.
Well, we have to do we have to do the same thing. And like the Roomba that tells you, hey, empty the bin. We have to remember to empty the bin.
Correct. Correct.
And there's a lot of ways to do that. I talk about walking. I work in telehealth, so I'm able to get outside between sessions. I play with my dog. I take walks. I do all of those things to empty the bin. And certainly I encourage my patients to do that. I encourage interns to do that because we're not built to hold this.
Correct.
We're not built to hold it.
We're not. We're not. And you say that because a couple things. One, I do what's called Trinitarian therapy, and because the mind works better in threes and thinking things from that perspective. And I present that there's mental health, mental wellness, and mental stamina. And you brought up a point. Sometimes it is an issue of mental health, dealing with whatever disorder or dysfunction, in some cases disease that we're dealing with from a mental health.
Dis-ease, yes.
Exactly.
Dis-ease, yeah.
And then there's times that it's simply an issue of mental wellness. It's not about mental health, it's about your mental wellness. Just like going to the gym, being able to have those check-ins when things are not, when the ocean's not necessarily in a storm, okay? And however though, it's hard from a clinical perspective to get individuals to come in when things are not in a stormy situation. I often say, let's come for a marriage check-in, check-up, or check-on, not when there's a storm and you're at each other and you're by, I've already talked to the lawyer and I've had them in many cases of this one. I'm here to just to meet with you but I've already decided that this is over.
Yes.
Okay. And trying to get individuals to understand though that it doesn't have to be at that point before you seek individuals out like ourselves to have that mental wellness check, okay? And then also the stamina to be able to keep it going and keep it moving as well as try to keep it together.
Well, I always say part of our job is to work ourselves out of a job.
Correct.
And
Correct.
so, and so that that's part of it. And again, and this is something that I work with interns on is we always begin with the end in mind. We have to know.
And what do you mean by that? Just to help clarify for some.
Well, we have to sort of know where we're going, or based on the issue and our understanding of it, along with the client, and them articulating what better looks like. So, but we have to be the ones to be able to see that. Because if not, you're sort of meandering or on that endless road trip. And so we have to begin with the end in mind.
And speaking of that, you mentioned something earlier about the trauma and childhood, okay? It's sometimes what I've seen over the years is your present problem, as I've said so many times, is usually not the source of your present pain.
True.
Your present pain is usually rooted in your past, okay? How is it that we can help individuals, though, from a clinical perspective, to deal with those traumas before the traumas begin to deal with them? Because oftentimes I see individuals and they may not necessarily identify it as a trauma, and they just think, well, no, that's the norm of what I went through growing up, and they don't truly see the impact that it's having on them in their present situations. Okay, so I guess my question is how can we help them to see that better? Okay, and then help them to deal with those traumas so that it's not a severe impact on their present situations.
Well, usually it is severely impacting. And I always like to ask people, where does it hurt?
Oh,
And they and
there you go.
they'll kind of laugh about it, and I'm like, no, come on, what's top of mind right now? Where is it hurting? I also do a lot of body work, so we're really getting in and talking about where they're feeling certain things, what they're feeling, and being able to identify that, because oftentimes we are so out of touch and so caught up in lifing that we don't always know what we're feeling. We don't know where we're feeling it. We just know we're feeling something. But psychoeducation, we think people know about trauma, but they don't.
Correct.
And so part of it is walking it back, providing them with the psychoeducation and and sort of the genesis of, or connecting the dots of certain responses to things, or over responses or overreactions to things, and where that comes from. Further exploring even coping mechanisms, because so often people think, well, that's just how I am. I've always been that way. And I always say, you didn't come out of the box like that.
Correct. Correct.
You didn't come out of the box like
Correct.
that.
Correct.
Yeah, let's talk about how long that particular coping mechanism, or where it came from.
And speaking of connecting the dots, though, okay, because that oftentimes is difficult, okay, especially in marriage situations where someone says, well, that's not me, that's her, or that's him, so to speak, okay. So from that perspective, how can we help them connect those dots, and how do you what's one of the techniques that you somewhat use that you see that really is advantageous, that really helps your clients?
Well, just this week I was talking with a couple, because what I see sometimes is there's the one individual who, and this is the example I give, they grew up, this was the kid that if they fell down and they hurt themselves, they got up, they just brushed it off, and they kept playing. And then there was the kid that cried and said, I'm bleeding, and they went in the house, and somebody was in the house, be it a grandmother or grandparent or parent, somebody was in there that said, oh, come here, let me clean this up for
Yes,
you.
yes.
They cleaned it up, they put a Band-Aid on, they gave you a little kiss, a little pat, and then they sent you back outside to play. But again, there's the other one who just brushed the dirt off and kept going. What that looks like later on is you have one partner, and I always say this is the suck it up buttercup person, because they're like, it's not so bad, kind of, what's wrong with
It's
you,
like, yeah, come on, let's
yeah, come
go.
on, we can keep going, like, what's wrong with you, and then there's the other person who may feel, or sometimes there's a little gaslighting going on, but they may feel like they're the problem. You're so extra, you just need so much, you're so needy, on and on and on. And so we have those internal narratives going on. So I use that example to help people start to understand, or at least reframe what that looks like.
Correct.
Because it's easy to fall into you're so extra versus, oh, okay, you do have big feelings, and let's talk about that. And also, if you are the person who was that child that had the big feelings, okay, if you perhaps have a Caribbean background, Caribbean, like that's Latino, Afro-Caribbean, people don't, your parents didn't know what to do with that.
Come on, come on.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do with that. And so you kind of got shut down. And so here you are as an adult with your big feelings, and no one helped you process those big feelings when you were a child. And then you're struggling with trying to process them as an adult. Or you're struggling with a partner who just doesn't get it. And so, and we talk about the loneliness that comes with that, just feeling so misunderstood.
Correct.
And just unsupported in that process. So that's kind of how I like to get at that with couples. And it just reframes, because we have to start to reframe that internal narrative that goes on.
And that's important, the reframing of that internal narrative, because those internal conversations sometimes takes us places that we are there, but nobody else is there.
Exactly, exactly.
And one of the things that you mentioned, and I often say to couples, that there's those who know you, and then there's knowing of you. And sometimes in relationships, we know them, but you either know them or you don't know of them. There's the intricate parts. Or you know of them, but do you truly know them? And one of the things that I say to them is, it takes time. It takes time. Before he passed, Dr. Miles Monroe, I used to be one. He was somewhat of a mentor to me, And I would go to his conferences and talk to him. And one of the things I heard him say at a marriage conference when I had just started, so as far as marriage, and he said that you're not really married until you hit 25 years. And at the time, I was like, 25 years. And now that I'm almost in my 40 years of marriage,
Same. Yeah.
I understand what he means, because it takes time to truly get to know somebody. And a lot of times in relationships, and you can speak to this as well, young people in relationships, as well as older, but they don't understand what you're really getting into, because it says the two shall become one. It doesn't say that you're already one just because you get married. It takes some time and becoming that one.
Well, and that's assuming that you're a one and a one when you get married.
Come on now.
So, all right. Now, I have to tell you, my first book that deals with it's living beyond my representative,
Okay.
a 90-day customizable workbook for authentic living.
Okay.
How that came about, it came about actually during the pandemic because I kept saying, I wish I had
A lot of
something.
things came about during the pandemic.
Yeah, that came about during the pandemic. I was like, I wish I had something, that for people that wouldn't go to therapy or may never go. So that the book, it's a workbook that actually walks you through many sessions.
Okay.
But you can answer the questions, you can do the work, you can do the check-ins, you can do all of those things if you never saw a therapist.
Okay.
But if you see a therapist, it's certainly a great, I think, adjunct to the therapy process. But the title of the book, the genesis of the book, came about because so many couples would say things like, "Oh, they changed so much after we got married," and and further talking about that, and I jokingly say to people, "You married the representative," and
Come
they're
on now.
like, "What? Yeah, you married the representative."
Now, with that being said, though, one of the things I also do as far as the analogous therapy, and I present to couples as well as individuals that everyone, give or take 8 billion people on this planet, so to speak, and everyone has his or her own house. And in that house, everyone's house, there's an upstairs. And upstairs are rooms. And in those rooms are the issues or the struggles or the traumas that we have in this thing called life. And when you marry somebody, you also have to be very careful, because you haven't fully went into their house. And if you have, I don't know if anyone truly lets us upstairs in all those rooms.
They do not.
Okay.
I can.
Now,
I mean,
you
they
say
do
that
not.
so strongly. Why?
Yeah, no, they do not, because the rooms aren't together. They do not.
Come on now. Come on.
No,
Come on.
they do not. But the other part of it is, I like to say when we connect with someone, we each have our set of luggage,
Come on.
and we don't
Okay.
always know. And so you start unpacking things, and then maybe you don't unpack all of it, but sometimes that luggage has a life of its own, and so things just start popping out anyway. But yeah, that's the bottom line. We don't really know. The other part of it is, you have I'll say the sunny weather, the good weather marriages or the good weather relationships.
Correct.
We need to see people in all the situations,
All
all
the
the weather,
seasons.
all the
All the
seasons.
seasons.
Exactly. Yeah. What are they like when they're angry? What are they like when they're having a bad day? What are they like when they're disappointed? Just like all of that. What are they like when things are going well? And then are you able to communicate in all of those seasons, or do they shut down? Yeah, all of those. Because again, people spend so much of their married life trying to find that person they first met, or the person that they thought that individual was.
Which goes back to when you say that they changed. Okay.
Yeah.
I did change. I had kids. I had I found out that there were rooms that I wasn't necessarily prepared to go into.
Or I wasn't allowed to go into.
And that's even better. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is why I sometimes present that the 3 S's, that in marriage there's sacrifice, there's suffering, but there also has to be satisfaction. And when I say suffering, I'm not saying that marriage is suffering. I'm saying that
Marriage can be suffering.
it can be. It can be.
It can be.
However, the issue though is the perspective that I put in there is
We gotta keep it
when your
real.
spouse. We'll keep it real. We'll keep it real. However, when your spouse is suffering and they're going through something, you're suffering with them, or at
You
least
are,
you should
yeah.
be.
No, you are. You are. You're impacted by it. But again, when people don't know how to let you into a room,
Correct.
and they've never let anybody into a room, and oftentimes, again, we'll have the child who got up, brushed themselves off, Told
What's wrong?
themselves
Yeah,
they're
what's
okay.
wrong with you? Why are you crying like that?
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
time we talk about something, you start crying. It's like, why just
Or you shut down
there you go.
because nobody helped you process what you were feeling.
The issue of childhood trauma that they don't always call trauma is something that's very evident because you said something that I've had to do this way.
Hmm?
I had to grow up at 8 years old and take care of my siblings. Okay, I had to make sure we were eating at 12, or my mom would come home and say, "What's wrong with you? Why don't you got the kid?"
Hmm.
So there's that early parentification
Yep.
that a lot of adults had to go through as teens, and they carry that, and they carry that, and if you marry someone who's carrying that, let's talk about that. What are some of the signs that you might see, or what are some of the things that you might find yourself dealing with that you didn't think that was on that radar or was presented by that representative, so to speak?
Well, sometimes the representative presents that they have it all together. The representative comes in, like I'm going to say uh, the hero. They're coming in to save. They're coming in to secure. They're coming in with all of that stability and that security. But then as life starts to life and the
Mm-hmm.
load gets a little heavy, again the mask
Slowly starts coming down.
slipping off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And again, how do people cope? Because I think it's those coping mechanisms that we learn in those
I
situations.
was never taught to cope though,
Oh,
or
you
I
did?
had
No,
I
you
had to cope in a way that may not necessarily have been the best way to cope, but
right?
that's how I had to. That's
Yeah,
how we had
yeah,
to roll.
yeah, yeah. And so that's what you see. Well, why are you doing it that way? Or why won't you let me in? Or why won't we talk? Or why the secrecy? Yeah, all of that. But that's what I learned.
So, good, good.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
so if that's where we are, where we're going, and where we're headed, if we do address those issues, and where we're going and where we're headed if we don't, because in some instances, I don't see everyone addressing those issues that we're talking about right now.
And not everyone is equipped to address those issues. Um, I'm going to speak on something for a moment that may not be popular, and that is sometimes you get what you pay for.
Come on.
And I'm just going to say you get what you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
I find that people want the work, they want the help, they want the work, but they want it for as little investment as possible.
There you go.
And you can certainly find providers out there that will give you those services
Let's keep it
for
real. Yeah.
as
Mm-hmm.
little investment
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and sometimes financial investment as possible. And I think as providers, we have to know our worth. We have to know our worth.
Correct.
Because I know for me, I don't have a like, well, here's the bargain
Correct.
therapy, and then
Correct.
here's the premier.
Correct.
It's all the same. It's all the same. I would say I bring my A game. You're going to get the A game.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end of the day, as a provider, I also want to feel that, yeah, you got the A game, you got the results that you were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I feel good too.
And then some. And
Kind
then
of thing.
some.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel good too.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you're looking at the experience, the knowledge, the expertise, the education,
Correct.
all of that.
Correct.
And so, with that being said, I think people just have to understand that when we are standing on this is my fee,
Mm-hmm.
this is there's a reason for that.
Correct.
Now, it's not that we're not magicians, we're not miracle workers,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a mutual relationship, meaning that, yeah, I'm going to bring the A game, but I also expect you to bring your honesty, your openness, your willingness to try some new interventions, and just be open to learning,
Correct.
as well. So we're meeting halfway. You're going to get the results that you are desiring, but it's also depending on the amount of work that you're willing to put in.
Correct. Correct.
And so, I think that's key in all of this. When people are ready to work, we got it.
And yes, and costs can't always be the issue, so to speak. And you say that, and oftentimes I'll get that. Well, you're on the higher side, and you got to look at what you're getting though.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're getting someone who's wired. You got the knowledge, the wisdom, and insight, the results, and the experience in one package. And like you said, we have to know your worth. Know your worth. Okay, and although we're not going to tell them, but you got a lot of experience right now that you're listening to right now, and one of the things that I will always say, especially when I work with interns, is that there is a career and there's a calling, and the
Absolutely.
career is what you choose, but the calling chose you.
Absolutely.
And when you're allowing the gifts that God has given you and you're walking in your calling therapeutically, I don't know about you, but I cannot do the things that I do right now without his calling
Oh,
on my life.
absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, and I want to go spiritual for just a moment
Okay.
because that is a very strong component
Mm-hmm.
that from a therapeutic perspective, without that as clinicians, people often ask me, how do people do it without their faith? And I was like, they don't. I don't know what they're doing. They're doing something.
They are doing
They're
something.
doing
Yeah. Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and from with your practice and your experience, how have you seen faith be an anchor to help individuals, and how do you use that in your practice?
We talk about faith. We talk about spirituality. I infuse it in as the individual is comfortable with, and most people that come to me are comfortable with, and
Mm-hmm.
that is what they want. And so we infuse it in. I also have this wonderful little book
Mm-hmm.
that I like to use sometimes. It's a book. It's called it's letters. It's letters from the Father's heart,
Mm-hmm.
and they're letters if God were to write us letters. And sometimes I find sessions end with they're not all the answers are there, or it's there but it's just very uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
perhaps for the person. And what I love about this little book, I have two now. The first one, I literally wore it out in the first few
Wow.
years of
Wow.
my practice. I have it. The book is in pieces,
Mm-hmm.
but it's worn out.
And what's the name of the book again? I want them
From
to
the Father's heart.
from the Father's heart.
Yeah. And I can open that book, and I do. I just open the book, and the letter always, and I mean always, lines up with whatever we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people in tears. I'm reading them the letter, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh!"
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
I'll read it to them, and then they're like, "Can you send it to me?" Yes, I can.
There you
Click.
go.
All right, it's on the way. But yeah, and so many of my clients have actually gone and bought the book themselves. And even people that weren't necessarily spiritually inclined
Mm-hmm.
bought the book. They're like, "Where can I get that book?" And they'll go get the book.
Mm-hmm.
But they like the letters, and I always tell them it's like an onion. You can read that same letter
Right.
a few
Right.
weeks from now, and you'll see some things in it that you didn't see before.
Right.
So yeah, I love spirituality in my sessions.
And when we say spirituality, because we like to keep it real, I'm talking about Father, Son,
Son and
Holy
Holy
Spirit,
Ghost. Yep.
Jesus Christ
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
as Lord and Savior.
Yes.
Because oftentimes when we say faith and spirituality, people sometimes get it bent in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no.
And
No.
and it's important that we understand. Yes, we do respect other people's ability to believe what they want to believe, but as clinicians, that doesn't mean that we have to change what we believe
Correct.
and how we implement those things.
Correct.
And I often tell interns that as a clinician, your job is not to convert anybody.
Exactly.
Okay. However, there are times when what you say to them may be convicting enough to help them change their life in such a way that allows them to live the purpose for which they were created to live.
Yes.
Before we end, can you tell us a little bit about your books? And if you can, just a little bit about Journey's End before we end.
Okay. Well, I told you about the first book, which
Mm-hmm.
is dealing with those representatives. We all have them, by the way.
Okay.
And so that book is really about walking you through integrating all those different masks to become your true and authentic self in all areas of life.
Okay.
The book, my most recent book that came out last year, how to unleashing acceptance,
Okay.
how to turn challenges into triumphs.
This is Tammy Austin. She's with Journey's End, and I look forward to us meeting again. And you are
Absolutely.
definitely going to be one of my frequent flyers. Okay.
Okay.
So,
All right.
thanks, Tammy.
Thanks. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
You've been listening to Matters of the Mind, a podcast that focuses on matters that affect the mind. I'm Dr. Rick Adams, licensed psychotherapist and professor of psychology and human behavior. Come, join me on the couch as we discuss matters dealt with, matters dealing with, and the matters that we avoid.